Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hi, Nicole. Hi, Carolyn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
Well, what can I'm going to do a quick bio read and then we could get started. The goal for this session, if you're watching this in the near or distant future, is to provide a resource for UT students in English and in the creative fields to learn more about about writing in the medical field, about transitioning from English to medical education and the medical profession. And I'm joined by two amazing people here, which I'm very grateful for. Thank you. I'm going to read out your bios quickly, and then we can get started. So Carolyn C. Thompson, MD, is a board-certified OB/GYN with over 30 years of clinical and practice management experience. You have experience in both clinical and entrepreneurial sectors, and you've served as CEO, Chief Medical Officer, and Medical Director for health technology companies. Dr. Thompson's expertise has facilitated her work as a medical litigation consultant in malpractice cases, and you've been involved with Mission International OB/GYN mission work for over 20 years, which is amazing. So thank you for coming. And then Nicole is a fourth-year medical student at the University of South Alabama College of Medicine. Nicole graduated from the University of Tennessee with a major in biochemistry and minors in English and psychology. Prior to graduation, she completed a thesis exploring the intersectionality of art and medicine in the form of a poetry chapbook, detailing her experiences volunteering on a surgery floor. She's continued to write medicine-related poems that have been featured in many literary magazines, and which is fantastic. And she's pursuing a career in psychiatry, and you're waiting for more information about the residency program that's coming up.
Yes, I find out where I matched next week, so I'll have more information on where I'm moving then. But yep, next
I was
Friday.
going to ask when match day was. So.
Yeah.
And this event is sponsored by the English department, so thank you, the English department, for putting it on. Okay, so I have so many questions, and I wonder if you could just talk a bit about either how your time either as an English major or just your experience as an undergrad has prepared you to kind of get into the medical field. That's the first question. Nicole, do you want to go first, and then?
Sure. And I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for having me be a part of this. I was actually really excited when I was asked to be on it because this is kind of a conversation that I've been having a lot over the past few months in my interviews. I wrote my personal statement about writing poetry, so it's very relevant to my English minor and kind of my pursuits after that, and how it essentially led me to my choice of choosing psychiatry. So I guess I was kind of untraditional in the sense that I started out college, I minored in biochemistry. I knew I wanted to do something kind of medicine related. I thought I would maybe go to pharmacy school, but then I realized I really wanted to work with people and be involved in patient care. And so pretty early on, I was focused on going to medical school. And I came in with a lot of credit hours. So I started a psychology minor really early on. I loved studying that. And then about my junior year, I had a lot of space in my schedule. And I've always really loved English. Basically anything creative, artistic, I like to do. And I really missed thinking abstractly and looking at things deeply. And so I was like, well, why not add an English minor? I have the space in my schedule. So I did that. And honestly, it was one of the best decisions that I ever did, because mostly I started that as a sort of pursuit to write poetry more seriously. And those classes kind of transformed my perspective a lot, as well as a lot of literature classes that I took. But it really, I would say it was kind of this like pivotal point that I was able to start from and keep tethering myself back to in a way. And I don't want to get ahead of myself because I was about to start talking about how it's like really helped me through my medical school journey. And I know the question was kind of more about undergrad now, but yeah, I think that especially not necessarily studying for the MCAT. I mean, you have to have good study strategies, and kind of English is a different space to that, but especially the process of writing your application, writing your personal statement, and med school interviews. I think I'm kind of going through that same process again now, and I'm still relying on the things I learned and got from my English minor to do that. I think just having really strong skills in writing is always going to be really helpful and essential to anything that you go into, but especially medicine. I think it can help you stand apart from the pack to be able to really kind of articulate your identity and your journey in a strong, coherent way through writing. So I think that's something that maybe stood out a bit to the reviewers, the application committees when I was applying to med school, and again when I'm applying to residency. So I think that that's something that has really been a consistency throughout.
That's great. Thank you so much. Carolyn?
Yeah, just I really have to echo what Nicole said at the very end there. I mean, all of it I think is definitely germane, but the ability to communicate is critical in medicine. That's really kind of where the rubber meets the road. You have to be open to receiving the communication from your patient. You have to be able to communicate clearly and empathetically the information that is important for your patient to understand to facilitate their health. And there is nothing like an English major to develop those communication skills. Typically, of course, when we think of an English major, we think of writing papers, but I think that skill certainly translates into verbal skills as well, without much, much of a stretch. The ability to logically work through stories is what an English major teaches, and medicine is a story. You just have to be able to ascertain what that story is as it's told to you, whether it comes to you verbally as the patient gives you their history, if it comes through your examination of their physical body, or the interpretation of various studies that you might order. But putting that story together leads to the diagnosis. And then you have the ability to provide care. Another aspect I think that's really important is the empathy that's engendered in I think when you interact with an art form, it helps you to understand people in a different way. And I think that's a really critical aspect of medicine, is being able to meet a patient empathetically where they are, and having knowledge of our common human history as it's laid forth in various art forms, and in particular for English in the written word. I think that's really important. So I went into undergrad knowing that I wanted to go to medical school and knowing that I wanted to major in English, which 30 years ago was nuts. And now it's a thing. So I feel like I was a little bit ahead of the curve, but it really even as I was going to class and studying, that juxtaposition was really important to me. So if I was tapped out writing a paper for, one of my English classes, then I could pivot over to, studying microbiology and it was almost like, walking from one hemisphere of my brain to the other. And then when I was, completely strung out from organic chemistry lab, I could walk down the hill to humanities and go into Shakespeare class. And it was this breath of fresh air. So having those two things, and that's what I wrote my personal statement about. The opening line was, "I've always lived two lives." And that was those two sides of, two sides of the brain, two sides of my passion, two sides of what I enjoy. I think both of those things have been really important to me, not only in my preparation for my career and my, living out of my career, but the other aspect of it that I think is really important is having something to fall back on and having something that can feed you and when your tank is empty. And that's what literature does for me. That's what art does for me. That's what music does for me. So I think it's not just about, getting a job and earning a living. It's also about living a life.
This is really great. Thank you both. I had a question, and this one doesn't have to be about like the English, but maybe it is. I don't know. I know there's a lot of people watching this that would think, like, what is the process of trying to get into the field? Like, let's say you're standing day one, you're doing an English degree. How did you break into the medical field? I mean, Carolyn, would you like to talk about that? Like, what were the steps to, if someone doesn't know, to getting into the medical side of things?
So the way it was way back in the day, like even before my day, was, you went to undergrad, you studied science. That's pretty much all you studied. And then you could, I think this was true even in the 70s and early 80s, you could leave undergrad after 3 years and go immediately into, if you wanted to go to pharmacy school, if you wanted to go to dental school, if you wanted to go to medical school. So you didn't really even need an undergrad degree. You could just go right to medical school. That changed in the 80s, and I started college in the fall of 84, and you could basically major in whatever you wanted to as long as you took your science classes. So that was sort of my in, which did not please my father at all. He was a UT engineering graduate, um and he's like, "Well, what if you don't get into med school? What are you going to do with that?" I'm like, "Well, thanks, Dad." And I hadn't realized that he had been saving money to help me go to medical school the whole time. So he was, which was sort of his way. But so I knew I wanted to do that. And, I had an advisor in the college who, was, the health sciences advisor, and she basically said, these are the classes that you need to take. And there were materials that I got from, I guess, from UT Memphis, and I applied to numerous different medical schools, and then I got into UT Memphis first, and I just let all the other applications lapse because it made sense for me to go there. And I got a great education. Yeah, so it and these days it's opened up even more. So you can major in whatever you want to major in. as long as you take the science courses. So all of my electives were like biochem and microbiology and organic and physics and all of those things. But you also having a non-traditional major makes you a much more attractive candidate, because there's in my class of, I think we started with 150. I was the only English major. We had a philosophy major, we had 3 music majors, we had several engineers, we had couple of psychology majors, and then most everybody else majored in a science. So biology, biochem, chemistry. One of my best friends was a chemistry major. So it's less about what you major in. And, college is really your last chance to truly study whatever you want. So I wish I had 4 more years to take history and philosophy and all these things that I only got to sort of get little dribs and drabs of. Does that answer the question? I hope that's
That's great.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with a lot of that. I think that's definitely continued to trend. They really value people from diverse backgrounds, and that includes diverse majors. So if there's anything that you can set yourself apart from the pack, so to speak, with, I think that that's always going to be an asset, and that's something that you can play up. For me personally, medicine was kind of this elusive thing. It seemed kind of like an outsider's game. I do not have anyone in my family that is in medicine at all. So when I came to college, it did help that I majored in biochem, because I was surrounded by a lot of other pre-med people as well. But if I was going to it from just the English perspective, like if I was only in my English classes all the time, how would I kind of find out about it? How would I get exposure to it? How would I figure out the path to medical school and to a career in medicine? I would say the internet has come a long way. It's very helpful these days. There's so many people out there that have all of the information you could ever want and need. And it is really good. Actually, there's a lot of people, even like some of the tutoring stuff, like Khan Academy videos. Those are like hands down the best resource ever for studying for the MCAT, and completely free. I don't know if it's still free. It was free when I did it, but yeah, those are great. And there's just a lot of really great resources out there. So if you can just do a little bit of research, I think the internet can actually help you a lot with that process. And I also will say the pre-med advisors at UT are fantastic. Honestly, I forgot about it until Carolyn mentioned it, but coming from the perspective that I'm at now, where I feel like my medical school advising has been kind of lacking overall, and looking at it at UT, like I just came from a place that was so rich in advising, and they really helped a lot. So definitely, and there's tons of them. So definitely link up with the College of Arts and Sciences to find a pre-med advisor. They will help you out so much, even if you just have general questions about things. But if you're really serious about the journey, even if it's like NP school, PA school, any kind of health career, they can help with that a lot. So I would definitely recommend doing that, talking to them, figuring out what sort of classes you need, because across the board, I think it's pretty much consistent what sort of prerequisites that medical schools want. So with like slight differences here and there. So if you can just take the basics and, like Carolyn said, major in whatever you want, take whatever classes you want. I absolutely agree. I took some of the most fun classes of my life in college, and it was great. Just really fascinating, interesting. And now that I'm just in the weeds of medicine all the time, I kind of miss that. Like it was fun to just do things differently with my brain. But I will also say something that was really helpful for me to get exposure to medicine and kind of see different specialties, and even just figure out if that's what I really wanted to do. It is the college volunteering program that they have at UT Medical Center. I did that for 2.5 years. It is kind of a time commitment because they want you to be able to do 4 hours every week and it's the same slot. So if you can build your schedule, I feel like it works out well for humanities majors because there's a lot of like Tuesday, Thursday classes. But if you can build your schedule where there's some 4 hour gap at any point within the week, then I would totally recommend doing that. It's like very valuable volunteering experience as well as just getting really good exposure to the medical field and what physicians are doing. So that was one of my like favorite things that I did, that I was able to like find certain interests and really solidify that I wanted to do medicine. So I totally recommend doing that.
That's great. And is there a requirements on who can sign up for that?
I don't think so. I know that there's a form, an application form, but I'm pretty sure that they accept everybody as long as you have that time window that you're able to commit to.
That's
Thank
great. I'm glad to hear that the advising is still as robust as it was back in the day when I was there. My advisor was Ruth Darling, who I still remember after all these years. She just retired, I think like 3 or 4 years ago. And it was amazing. I mean, I don't think I would have gotten in without her guidance. Because she really kind of did not do well my first when I was in school, we were on quarters, and I did not do well in my first quarter in organic chemistry, and she helped me. She's like, this is not a roadblock, this is a hurdle. I'm like, okay, you gotta you gotta get me where I want to go. And I'm also glad to hear that there's still clinical opportunities, because I think that was a real boon for me. There was an externship for a summer that I did at the medical center, and I worked in the Department of Surgery putting together their trauma statistics, not because I knew anything about statistics. I was just like crunching the numbers and building a report. And I had the best boss I've ever had in my whole life. And I was my own boss for 20 years. She was the trauma nurse secretary, and she was amazing. And so it helped me to solidify my desire to go into medicine. It helped me to just know that the more, because she told me, she said, I don't care what you do as long as you get your work done. So if you can get all this stuff crunched in 4 hours a day, the other 4 hours, I'll help you do whatever you want to do. So I got to fly on live flight. I got to go to the body farm. I got to go into surgeries and see all sorts of different stuff. And it made me really realize, yeah, this is what I want to do. So I think it's awesome that those experiences are continuing and expanding.
Thank you so much. I now have a writing question. So what kind of writing do you do in the medical field? I know it's a big question. I don't know whether you want to be like I sort of wanted to maybe limit it by like early stage medical professionals just for our students, but I'd love to hear what kind of writing do you find yourself or think you're going to be doing?
So I guess I'll kind of break it down by the years of medical school. The first 2 years are very, very similar to college. So if you kind of like can hone in on a good study strategies and learn to do that really well, it's more or less a lot of the same thing. It's just a lot more intense. But where the writing really comes into play and is really important is starting in your third year of medical school, pretty much across the board, wherever you go, that is going to be your clinical year. So it'll be about 12 months of clinical rotations. And they do have you, at least at my medical school, there were clinical skills, like there were opportunities for us to learn about what components go into a patient note and kind of skills to write a patient note and learning that sort of language. And but it's not until third year where that really comes into play, and you have to kind of do it very nuanced and effectively. So that, I would say, is the majority of writing that you'll have to do day to day in medicine. There's a lot of documentation, and if you can be quick and efficient with it and good at it, it's like that is the best skill that you can have. And that's something that I didn't even realize until because it came naturally to me with my experience writing poetry and my experiences in English. And it wasn't until I talked to my classmates and they were like, oh, I'm really struggling with this. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that people struggled with that. But it's something that is so huge. I mean, you'll be doing it every single day. There are other aspects of writing that are in medicine, but I would say I mean, the largest component is just your patient notes, and it's a record, it's a diary of that patient's story and their relationship with you. So it's really important to have that very detailed and clear and linear. Like, it has to be a strong narrative. So it's very in the wheelhouse of English people, I think. But there's a lot of research opportunities and things in academic medicine that you can do a lot more writing with. But for me personally, since I'm a very creative person and I love creative writing, I have done my best effort to continue writing poetry throughout my medical school. It's been tough, especially third year is rough, but thankfully they do give us a lot of opportunities for reflection. And I always use those moments to try to challenge myself to write in some capacity, mostly write poetry about a certain patient experience or stories or something that I'm going through, help process things. And and I'm glad that has kind of been a solid throughout my training thus far, because it's really helped me kind of make sense of things, to really continue to find my purpose, to ground me, to prevent me from burnout, all of the things. I think it's truly amazing, and it really gives perspective, especially in medicine, and the people that are in medicine, and just like the things that they teach you. Everything is so just really laser focused in. And especially in medical school, you have to learn all these tiny nuanced details about everything, and it gets really overwhelming. And the perspective tends to always be like laser focused in, what are these labs, like what are all these signs and symptoms telling me, what's the diagnosis. But seldom do they ever focus on or emphasize taking a step back and kind of looking at the patient holistically. And that's something that I think creative writing really helps with, just inherently as you're doing the day to day. I think it just is kind of in the background. If you're a creative writer, then that's kind of how you see the world in a lot of ways. And so it's allowed me to really maintain that perspective, to not get too laser focused in, and be the best that I can for patients. So not necessarily formal writing in the sense of like, this is what I have to do as requirements for my job, but as a kind of outside hobby thing, I think it is creative writing in itself in any capacity is really helpful for being a doctor and doing all the day-to-day stuff. So that's kind of my perspective on the writing stuff. But definitely you cannot go wrong with just having really strong skills in the daily documentation, and even any research or whatever you want to pursue. I think that is definitely will be a strength and an asset in any patient environment.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think definitely having that as an outlet was helpful for me to just process everything that was happening, because it's truly like drinking from a fire hose. Like I remember in orientation for medical school, they showed us that the clip from I Love Lucy that everybody knows, with the candy coming through. And it's so true. You think, oh, this is cool. I've got this. And then they're like, speed it up. And it just keeps coming. But I also, you have to write letters of referral to other physicians, and, tell them what's going on with the patient, why you're referring the patient. When someone refers a patient to you, you have to write a letter back to them to let them know what, the encounter with the patient, what you ultimately ended up doing, so all of that, again, you want to be, informative, but you want to be concise and precise, about these interactions. My practice for many years was at a community hospital here in the Nashville area. And I was the chairman of our department for a period of time, which is not a big deal. It was just my turn. And so I had to write letters to administration, and I had to write letters to my colleagues when they were doing things that they probably ought not to be doing. And so, having the ability to, construct this communication, I think was helpful in all of those circumstances. So I agree with Nicole. You really can't go wrong when you have this foundation of and this foundational skill. It really enhances the interaction with patients. It enhances the interaction with colleagues, and it has the ability to enhance your own life as well.
I just wanted to add another thing too. I've heard before, like I remember in my pre-med years, people telling me that medicine was a lot of documentation. And I had only done shadowing some physicians here and there at that point. And I was like, okay, how bad can that be? And it wasn't until I'm doing it now and I was like, oh, you have to write notes every day. You have to, and they're really thorough. Like it truly is a lot. And there's nothing more helpful than being able to convey a really clear story about what a patient came in for and what you did to them, for everyone in the medical environment, that they're going to rely on your note about what happened to this patient. So it's just really, really essential to everything you're doing, I think.
Yeah, and having seen like operative reports from, other people, like, well, we took her to the operating room, we opened her up, we found whatever, we closed her back, and I'm like, what?
They're always so short.
Can we have some details here? Because my op notes were like 3 pages long. And yeah, so, and I think that's, obviously I'm not writing those longhand, although I did at one time, but we, now you dictate them, and someone transcribes them, and but it's drag and dictate now. So, but yeah, the just because once you know how to think that way, then it comes through in everything, in every way that you communicate, whether it's in writing, whether it's verbally, and your mind is organized in this way that fortunately it's hard to get away from.
This is fantastic. Andrew, thank you so much for coming. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I do have a question, and I'm unsure if y'all have any experience with it, but as you know, the timeline between undergraduate and medical school can be vast or short. So in the time in between that, is there anything you recommend for English majors to pursue medical career-wise to get more experience, or something that's pertaining to a unique skill set that medical English majors have in medicine that we can expand upon in that time?
I can go ahead and answer my thoughts on that. I did not do a gap year between undergrad and medical school, but honestly, I wish I did. Not for lack of like preparation or anything. I think it's becoming increasingly more valued, and schools are looking at that. It's kind of more like an unspoken requirement at this point. I think that you can have success and you can get into medical school without a gap year, but since so many people are doing them now, it really does show a certain level of continued experience, which always looks good. So if you in any way are considering it, I would encourage it probably, even if you feel like you're ready to go ahead and jump right into medical school. I think that like some people worry about, oh, maybe I'm going to lose all of the knowledge that I had, but honestly, medical school is just so different than anything that you learned in undergrad. It's not going to matter that much. So don't worry about that. I would say take the time to really do anything productive. I don't think that places are looking for one specific cookie cutter mold of what you should be doing in your gap year. If you're looking for more medical experience just because you don't have that as much in your kind of undergrad path and extracurriculars, then I know some people that found jobs in medical offices and were kind of able to do that. I know some people that got, this is a little bit more of an investment, but I know some people that got like CNA certifications and did a job in that. Or you could try to find some research involvement. I think that always looks good. Maybe not necessarily the most medicine forward thing to do, because a lot of the research in undergrad is basic science components. But if you are able, but there are a lot of research opportunities at Tennessee. And if you're kind of able to find something, network, talk to your advisor, either a job, either some sort of research experience, or I know a lot of people that ended up doing a master's degree too. I mean, that is kind of a lot, but if that's something that you're interested in, that is something that people do. So that's kind of another path you could kind of take with that too.
Yeah, I actually did take a gap year, and this was decades before gap year was a thing. So, like I had to defend it. It wasn't an expected thing. So, and I worked, I traveled, I just, sort of got myself ready to do this. And actually the last thing I did before starting medical school was to go on the England drama trip. And so this was summer of '89. And I came back and then immediately moved into my apartment, and within like 3 weeks I was starting med school. But I would encourage you to do anything that's a passion project. So, something that you think, okay, this is my last shot to do this, or, I know I'm going to be pretty much locked down for the next 8 to 10 years. So, I want to get out there and do something that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Um, and I think, if you plan on taking a gap year and plan on doing something that's a passion project, it's definitely something to talk about in your interview, to say, look, here's what my plan is. This is a thing I really love, and I want to grab this while I have the chance. Because that speaks to your dedication of something that lights you up. And I think that there's respect for that. A thing that I know some people have done, because I've done, as Daniel said in my bio, I've done a lot of surgical mission work, and we've had medical students or undergrad students on these surgical trips that I've taken. If that's something that anyone's interested in, I'm happy to provide some guidance. place, with the teams that I've gone with. I've gone mostly to Central America, but I also had the good fortune to go to Malawi in the southern part of Africa. Gosh, it's been 9 years ago now, but really life-changing experiences. So, and I had a couple of undergrads who were ready to be OBGYNs after a week. So, so I think, something that that allows you to kind of decompress, enjoy life, because it's intense. It's going to be intense. And I think everybody knows that going in. I think it's a little bit probably like having a baby, that you think you got this, but you don't really realize until you get into it. It's like, oh, this is nothing like I thought it was going to be. But yeah, I think all of those things enhance your life, and they also make you an attractive candidate.
No, thank you so much. It perfectly answered my question. I do have to step outside for another meeting I have, but great getting to see you again, Dr. Thompson, and nice meeting you all. Thank you so much for this meeting. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew. We got another question from a student. Jess, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, hi. Also, hi, Carolyn. Nice to see you.
Hey, Jess, good to see you. Or to see Stitch.
Right. So I have been thinking, I am currently in the process of applying to vet school, and while being around that community, I found out that they have this thing where you can get, I don't know what the program's called, but it is where you can take your vet classes while in vet school, but you'll also be getting an MA in comparative and experimental medicine. And I had the crazy thought one day about, I wonder if there is a way to, even though they're completely different, do something like vet school, but at the same time getting an MA in English. And so that is why I was curious about, in terms of workload, what medical school, because like I have no basis of understanding just how much of a workload it is, if you think that trying to do the two would be even plausible in any way. Mostly just because I don't know. I definitely can use English in my vet work 100%, but I kind of fear, I love looking at literature specifically, and not necessarily scientific literature, but I'm just trying to think of ways where I don't have to necessarily let go my love of like literature analysis once I become a vet, since it'll be my primary job.
I'm happy to jump in on that. I mean, certainly there are people who do MD JDs, there are people who do MD PhDs. So it's definitely something that can be done. I have neither of those, so I don't really understand what that workload might be. Another kind of analogous thing is there are people who have babies when they're in medical school and in residency, and I don't really see it. It blew me away that people could do that and still, kind of sustain the level of focus that was needed. But I think if it's something that you're passionate about and something that's important to you, you will find a way to make it work.
I was going to say that exact same thing. Exactly. If it is important to you, you'll make it work. And I know less about vet schools, but I know there's a good bit of medical schools that do kind of like joint Masters of Public Health MD programs as well. So there is like ability to pursue masters in whatever associate education that you're doing. For medical school, time-wise, I kind of always felt that there was just not enough time in the day to study and learn everything and do everything that I needed to do. Like it felt very overwhelming in that way. So you have to be really good about time management and like programming it in. I don't think that your education would necessarily like it would like add a negative value to anything. I think that it's what I think we as like high achieving people, anyone that's pursuing this career, like we're perfectionists. We want to be able to know everything and be good at all of it. And that's just, you come to a point in your journey where you realize that that's not possible, that we're human. You can't keep everything in there. And so I kind of wish I learned that earlier on, but just kind of telling you that from the beginning, like you won't be able to ever know all of it and keep it all in your brain and be perfect at all of it. So you just do the best you can. And if you have something else that's calling to you that is an equally passionate part of your life, I think that go for it. I think it'll be tough. It's always a struggle to find those cracks in the day, but like Carolyn said, people have babies, people do all the things that seem beyond humanly possible, and you just make it work. And so I think that it's everything's going to be tough regardless. So if you're able to kind of be diligent with it, and it's something that you really see yourself doing, I think that it can also maybe in a way kind of help prevent burnout too if you're equally pursuing another passion. So yeah, I think that it's doable. People definitely do it, and I think you could find a way to weave it in there. But if if you get to that point or you get to the school and or you're like, wow, this is a lot. I don't think I can take on a master's right now. I know that, at least from my experiences, wherever the school is, they're usually big academic places. So the undergraduate or the graduate, whatever is affiliated with the university, they usually will have, an English department, and you can kind of involve yourself there in that way, in whatever way that looks like, in whatever way you want to, whether it's even just like small events or whatever capacity. So it'll be there and you can chase after it, even if it's not necessarily just a master's.
I definitely would love to, even if it's just that you guys have kind of bridged the gap between that, those two very different, I guess maybe not so different, but I would really like to do what you guys are doing, because I look to people like you and I think, oh my gosh, I can actually do this, but I would love to be doing the same thing you guys are.
That's so sweet. I encourage it, honestly. I think that continuing writing poetry, continuing humanities, arts, anything in that realm has been like so monumental to my journey in medicine and how I'm able to take care of patients. And I really think that the more that I talk to people about this, and I talked about writing poetry in every single one of my interviews. So this has been a conversation I've had a lot. And the more people I talk to about it, I really realize that I feel like poetry, or just the kind of the humanities more broadly, is just this really beautiful untapped space for healing that can be utilized in patient care. So that's kind of a goal of mine as I move forward through my residency and through my career. I would really love to like incorporate poetry in the patient space in whatever way that looks like, because I think that it truly allows you to connect with people better. I mean, that is kind of at the core of what that work is, and allows people to better understand themselves and allows you as a provider to better understand yourself. So I think that that is something that is so necessary. I feel like it's essential, but nobody really kind of thinks about it. And so I totally commend you to like wanting to pursue both. And I think that you absolutely should, and it will like do wonders for any patient that you ever interact with.
I think that's absolutely spot on. And I'm in the process of pursuing a certification through what's called the Center for Courage and Renewal, which is an organization that's founded by Parker Palmer. And as I transition out of clinical work, what I'd like to do is work with physicians and probably nurses as well, who are suffering from burnout, from moral injury, and that doing this work is a way for me to kind of get that certification to be able to facilitate these interactions. And ultimately, what I'd like to do is retreats for physicians and nurses. But a big part of the program for the Center for Courage and Renewal has to do with poetry. And there's a lot of Rumi, there's a lot of Rilke. There's, and I just gotten back from a retreat a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, in California. And, we did the work of an English major. We basically like broke down poems and parsed sentences and talked about the meanings of these poems. And it's so wonderful to kind of be back in that space in a more official way. So yeah, I think that, the interaction that you have with your patient, and the empathy that you can put forth is where healing begins to happen. And that's the heart of poetry. And yeah, it's gorgeous.
Thank you so much, both of you, and thank you, Jess, for the question.
Thank you guys. This is great.
Yeah. Well, this has just been fantastic. Thank you so much to both of you. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for sharing with us. Um, I don't plan to go to middle school, but I feel inspired. And I feel it's great to think of all the opportunities for our students. And so just to wrap up and recap, if I don't know, if I'm in my first or second year of undergrad at UT and I suddenly realize I want to go to medical school, I don't know, but so we've got some tips already. One is to try and do the volunteering at the clinical work. Another, I suppose, is try and look at some science classes to quickly start studying. Anything else and speak to your advisor. Anything else that someone, this imaginary person who's like, I know what I want to do in my life now. One other thing they should do?
I would say find some pre-med friends. That definitely helped me a lot. Even just at any point in your journey, have friends that are doing what you're doing, especially medicine, because there's so many complexities to it. Even just like all the little things that you need to apply to medical school, it just helps having somebody that you can like bounce off of.
Agree, definitely. Yeah, but really engage with the advisors, because they will help sort of lay out the path for you. And then definitely take advantage of internet resources, which were obviously not a thing when I was because it hadn't been invented yet. But there's a lot that's available now. And don't feel like you have to walk this path alone. There are plenty of resources to help you, and that can be almost anywhere. It can be advisors, it can be employers, it can be your peers. Like Nicole just mentioned, just having a group of friends who are going through what you're going through means everything.
Thank you
And I
both.
have friends that I made in undergrad that we had classes together that ended up in my med school class. And then we ended up, we're still friends now, all these years later. And now we're the old people that we used to make fun of. So life comes full circle.
I think it happens. It happens. Thank you both so much. This has been fantastic. Everyone, if you're an English major or English student or a humanities student watching this and you'd like to follow more, I think a great step would be to contact the careers office in the English department. The current director at time recording is Erin Elizabeth-Smith. She's a fantastic professor. Reach out to her. And this has been wonderful. Thank you both. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Nicole. This has been a wonderful
It's a
session.
pleasure.